Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Time Traveler's Handbook. We're going to be continuing our discussion on Palm Springs. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, go ahead and watch them now. Spoilers for Palm Springs ahead. I mentioned in the previous episode about the prospects of a time loop essentially creating an immortal being. We're continuing on with that thought in this episode as we talk about what it means to fall in love in a time loop. Let's talk about Sarah and Niles' relationship. Niles, up to the point that Sarah came into the loop, had not had the experience of being with another person that wasn't being brainwiped every single day for essentially 40 years. Sure, Roy was there, but there was no room for empathy or sympathy from Roy for a long time. Sarah then enters the loop, and those feelings of having another person returns to Niles. Being alone is another mentally damaging thing. I'm no psychologist, and I won't pretend to be, but I believe that being on your own with no one else that experiences the same things that you do has to do something detrimental to your mind. Niles accidentally brought Sarah into the same world that he was living in, and now he could never be alone again. If you're an immortal in the room with another immortal, there's no point in trying to avoid the other. At some point, your paths are going to intertwine. Niles took advantage of that with Sarah around, which started to get him dependent on her before they fell in love after all. Another emotionally damaging side effect of immortality in a time loop is that Sarah existed as an oblivious member of the mind-wiped group of people before she started to loop. Niles admits to have slept with her, quote-unquote, thousands of times. While the prospect of a man using his looping situation to take advantage of a woman that many times is frightening on its own, the added punishment of having to live with that as Sarah goes into the loop with him must be putting a tremendous strain on him and making him rethink his life decisions. The problem with love between immortals is that their infinite minds will never be satisfied, and they'll eventually grow bored of each other or hate each other, or their darkest secrets will set them apart. And to add on the top of that, there's no getting rid of each other. They will always share this space together. This has been betrayed in so many other cases with immortality. There's an example with Lord of the Rings when Arwen falls for a mortal, Aragorn, and is shown her future in which he would eventually die and leave her behind, leaving her in despair. And the better action to take in order to avoid despair, not necessarily what she does end up doing, is to not have fallen in love after all. That's not exactly the same as what we're talking about right now, so let's go back to Greek and Norse mythology. Odin and Zeus's wives both despise them, showing that being stuck together for eternity can cause some strain on a relationship. The story has been told through all ages of history. No matter how strong your feelings are at the time you fall in love, those feelings will fade over years and years you spend together. And immortals are especially vulnerable to this, as they have essentially infinite amount of chances for things to go wrong. So Sarah and Niles make a responsible adult decision in the name of their love for each other. They vow to either die together while trying to get out of the loops or spend their lives together when they get out. By escaping the loop, their life can end, and there's a hope that that love will not fade before reaching the end together. Niles initially wanted to stay and live forever with Sarah in the loops, but that would ultimately have not been a happy ending for either of them, and escaping was the only option if they wanted to stay together. That concludes the next part of our analysis with Palm Springs. We're going to have 2 more episodes, the next one being about the morality of making decisions in the time loop that would normally be morally evil, but are put in a different light when the day keeps resetting itself. Until next time, thank you for listening.